Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello nerds, how are you? I'm good. Today I want to talk about the way you talk about yourself because it matters so much more than we think. When I say the way you talk about yourself, I mean the way you talk about your past, or your current situation, or your flaws. When I was a graphic designer, I think it was like 6 years ago, I went to a stand-up comedy night, and the host pointed at me in the audience, and he was like, "You, what do you do for a living?" And I was like, I'm a graphic designer. And he said, "God, are your parents forcing you to do this? You really don't sound excited about what you do." And I was not. And it's so funny how he put his finger straight on it. And I remember when I met people who were really passionate about their work, I had a little hint of jealousy in me. And then when they asked me about what I did, and there was no spark in my answer, I felt sad. I felt sad because I thought it is possible to be excited about what you're up to 30 to 40 hours a week. And I just was so disappointed that it was not the case. And I knew that like all my creativity was kind of going to waste. The thing is, the way we talk about ourselves, the stories we tell when we meet someone, tell us so much about how we see ourselves and our lives. And that is going to have a massive impact on the future. And that's why it's so important to look at it, to pay attention to the way you tell your story. For example, if you say, "Oh, I come from a really rough background, so it's really hard for me to do X, Y, and Z," you perpetuate the reality that you've been in. Versus if you have the same situation, the same background, but you say, "I've overcome challenges and become such a strong person," it's completely different. Can you feel how it opens up the field of possibilities? And again, we just think, "Oh, I'm sharing the facts. This has been my life. This is who I am. This is what I do." But it's just one lens. The way you talk about yourself is influenced by the lens you have right now. It's like so many people can watch the same movie and come up with completely different interpretations. Sometimes I'm going to watch a movie and talk about it with a friend, and they say, "Oh, this part of the movie means this, and that." And I think, "You saw that?" I interpreted it so differently. And it's the same thing with books and songs. We all have a different lens, and we also have the power to change our lens, to look at what we've been through, what we're doing, who we are, through a lens that's going to serve us better. That's going to allow us to create a better reality for ourselves. A reality that's going to empower you, okay? Because right now, the way you talk about yourself is either limiting you, keeping you just as you are, or opening up the possibilities. And the reason for this is that the words you speak about yourself are thoughts, and thoughts create your results. They first create how you feel, and how you feel is what fuels your actions, your behavior. And that, all of your actions or your inactions, create your result, the reality that you live in. So your thoughts right now create your future reality. That's why you need to pay really close attention to the words that go through your mind. We often believe they're just the truth, but they're just a version of the truth and one interpretation of reality, when there's so many other interpretations that would be more helpful. If you don't pay attention to your thoughts and you just let your default programming take over your mind, then you're just going to repeat the same result over and over and over again instead of creating a new life that you love as a whole. An active creation of your life instead of just letting things happen to you and letting life just be as it is. You can decide what you want your life to be about in a more intentional, conscious way. So, what's the plan today? I'm going to go through 3 examples of unhelpful ways you might be talking about yourself. One that's focused on your past, one that's focused on your current situation, and the last one on your flaws. We will look at how they don't serve you and reframe each of them. Then I'm going to tell you more about why we do this and how we can step out of it and improve. So example number 1, let's say you tell the story, I was fired because I'm a woman and women have a hard time in this industry. So this is a thought about a neutral circumstance. The neutral circumstance there is what happened to you, the fact of what happened to you. So let's say I was fired. Then the thought is, I was fired because I'm a woman and women have a hard time in this industry. How does that thought make you feel? I would say something like frustration. And when you feel frustrated, how do you act? What do you do or don't do? I would guess that when you feel frustrated, you're so focused on what happened in the past that you might miss opportunities. There might be people in that industry that want what you have, that want to work with you, but you're not going to see the open doors because you're going to be so focused on your own feet and looking back at what happened. Another thing that can happen is if you have the thought, I was fired because I'm a woman and women have a hard time in this industry, then confirmation bias makes it so your brain is only going to see evidence that what you believe is true. And all the evidence that would prove you wrong are just gonna disappear. You're not gonna see them. You're gonna have blinders on and focus on all the situations that prove you right. You're gonna see all the women that are having a hard time in your industry. That's just how our brains work. And if you feel attached to your thought and you want to tell me, but it's true, there are facts, there are statistics, bear with me. I'm going to address that. After I've given you the 3 examples, I'm going to talk about truth. So if we reframe this thought in a way that serves you better, let's say it could be, I have so much to offer to this industry. Okay, the situation is the same. The neutral circumstance is you were fired. Your thought can be, okay, all right, next. I have so much to offer to this industry. How does that make you feel? I would guess something like determination. And when you feel determined, what do? Well, you offer your services. You go talk to people. You share, you tell them about what you have to offer and how good you are at your job. You show up with confidence. And then what's the result of that? Well, the result of that might be that someone there sees all of your greatness, all of the value that you can create, and says, come and work with me. I want to work with someone like you. Okay? The initial circumstance is the same, but the result is completely different just because of how you look at it, just because of the lens that you put on the situation. Okay, example number 2. I'm stuck in a job I hate because I have bills to pay. I've heard this one so much. I've seen it in my DMs. Oh, I'd love to go on a thru hike, or I'd love to start a business, but I can't because I'm stuck in this job that I hate because I have bills to pay. When you think this way, how do you feel? Again, I would guess frustration. And when you feel frustrated, what do you do or don't do? Well, one thing is you probably hate your job even more because you feel stuck there. So you focus on everything that you dislike about that situation. And one thing you probably don't do is sit down to make a plan for something better. Okay, and the result is you remain stuck in a job you don't like. Whereas if you reframe this and the situation is the same, but you say to yourself and to other people around you, you say, I'm doing this right now to pay my bills and build my dream. Okay, I'm going to repeat. I'm doing this job right now to pay my bills and build my dream. How do you feel when you say that? What comes to me is excitement. You feel excited. And when you feel excited, what happens? You probably spend more time thinking about your dream and making a plan that's going to make it possible. And that job, you know that job is temporary and it's just part of a bigger plan for you to live the life that you want. And the result of that is that you step closer to that life. So you might still be in that job, but the being in that job has more meaning and it has an end to it. You're not stuck. You're strategizing. It's completely different. The energy is completely different. Okay, example number 3. Let's say you tell yourself and other people, I'm such an unreliable person. I never finish what I start. Okay, so the thought is I'm unreliable. I never finish what I start. How does that make you feel? Would it be something like shame? I would guess shame. And when you feel ashamed, what do you do or don't do? When you feel shame, you bring that feeling, that heaviness with you everywhere and it shows up in your actions. So when you start a project and you have that shame inside of you, as soon as something doesn't go as planned, you make it mean that you're not good enough, that you're a failure, so you give up. Again, that's confirmation bias. If a part of you keeps thinking, I never finish what I start, your brain's gonna get busy looking for evidence of that. And you might have tons of evidence in your past, but your past doesn't matter. What matters is the moment right now and the person that you can become. If you have this thought, I never finish what I start, and you feel ashamed, it's like a lingering presence. That shame is a lingering presence. As soon as you show a sign that this might be true, it hits you harder than it should. So let's say you tell yourself, oh, I'm going to run every day for half an hour. And then the first day that you skip, that shame is going to rise to the surface and take hold of you. And the next day you're going to think, well, I've missed a day, so I'm just proving myself again that I can never finish what I start. But that's bullshit. You can just start again the next day and not be so hard on yourself. So let's reframe that thought. I'm feeling very passionate about this because I know so many of you think this way about yourself as if it's a fact. But instead, change your lens and practice believing I'm learning to follow through. Or, you can come up with your own words. That's just an example. I'm learning to follow through. When you say that, how does it feel? I'm learning to follow through. Another one might be, I'm willing to consider that I can finish what I start. How does it feel when you say that? When you say, I'm learning to follow through. It feels more open, right? I would guess there is some hope in there. And when you feel hopeful, what are you going to do? You're going to be kinder to yourself. You're going to be willing to make mistakes and start again. When there's hope, you're not as harsh. So if we take the running example again, if you skip one day, but you think I'm learning to follow through, this is just part of the learning, then it's much easier to start again the next day because it's just I'm learning. And when you're learning, you don't have to be perfect, right? I'm just learning. It's normal to make mistakes. I'm learning. I'm a beginner. I'm in the process. I'm getting better. You hold your flaws in a different way. And we all have flaws. But we have a choice. We can see our flaws as our enemy. If we do, they become our enemy. Or we can see our flaws as just parts of us, like friends. Like, oh, I'm imperfect. That's just how I am, and it's okay. And if you see your flaws as friends, that's what they become. Just friends that are there, that are not getting in your way. Yes, they might be annoying sometimes, but they don't purposely stand in the way of your goals. So I told you earlier I would come back to the concept of truth, because so many of you are attached to those thoughts. And you say to me, but it's true, I do never finish what I start. It's true, I am stuck in a job that I hate. And it's true that there is sexism in that industry and women have a hard time. All right, but truth doesn't always matter. I'm going to give you an example. When I went hiking a few summers ago, I met this, I think he was like 60-year-old man who told me how he was grieving the loss of his wife who'd passed away to cancer. He was really sad, but he said, I'm sad, but I'm also grateful because she was an angel that God sent to me for me to enjoy for 25 years. And that thought, that story that he told himself is what got him out of his home and onto the trail. And who would I be in that moment to tell him, oh, well, that's not true. Like, angels don't exist. Like, God is not a thing. It's just plain science. Your wife had cancer and she died. Like, who cares about scientific facts in that situation? What matters is that this person found a story that he could tell himself that made him feel alive enough so that he would get out of his funk and do something good for himself and for his family and for his friends. And I want to give you another example for when it comes to racism. I'm going to read a post that the Black consultant and writer Africa Brooke wrote that expresses exactly that. Okay, so if you want to follow her, she's brilliant. It's just Africa Brooke on Instagram. It's a few slides, so bear with me. She says, I've come to realize that a lot of what I say is incredibly inconvenient for those that have limited view of how Black people should think and behave. Despite there being billions of us globally, it seems as though many are ready to scream, listen to Black voices, but only if those voices are reading from a script deemed acceptable, palatable, and in line with the narrative of the day, which is usually a very Americanized one. As a Zimbabwean immigrant living in London, the most venom I've received is from self-proclaimed liberals who take issue with me saying that I personally am not and have never identified as oppressed. Being from a country like Zimbabwe, where most of my family still are, I know what oppression looks like, and I'm not volunteering this information for pity or to compare struggles. I mention it to offer necessary context. To sit here in the Western world with the amount of access to opportunity I have, whilst claiming oppression as my truth, is like spitting in the face of all those people who don't have access to even the most basic resources. Me rejecting oppression as my default does not mean I'm rejecting the hardship and reality many are going through outside of and within the West. It means that I'm willing to see myself beyond what my family and I have experienced, beyond my identity markers, and beyond the suffering prescribed to me by people who know fuck all about me. Oppression aside, there are some people out there who will choose to reject my work and my credibility because I refuse to fuel the division that we're seeing today. I've said it before and I will happily say it until I'm no longer here. I will never entertain the idea that there is something wrong with me, openly declaring that I will not hate or demonize an entire race or gender in the name of justice. I will not engage in cyberbullying in the name of justice. I will not deny reality in the name of justice or progress. I will not cross my own boundaries or someone else's for empty social credits. I will not hold myself or others to absurd standards of morality. I will not disempower those that share the same skin tone as me in the name of justice. I will not choose popularity over being in integrity. I won't fucking do it. It's very telling how many will resort to racial slurs, shaming, and insults when they come across a disobedient black person who won't fall in line. Well, you better strap in, dearies. I'm not going anywhere. So that's Africa Brooke. And the reason why I wanted to share this is because although it is true that racism exists, it is true that black people are still oppressed, she individually has decided that she will not entertain the thought, I am oppressed, because it doesn't serve her. It doesn't serve her and the life that she wants to create. And that doesn't mean it doesn't serve other people. Some people might want to have this thought because maybe it makes them feel in a way that leads them to fight for the liberation of black people. Okay, it really depends on what you want to create, what kind of life you want to lead. So one thought might serve someone and not serve somebody else. It's not a conversation about is this a good or a bad thought, is does this thought serve you specifically? Now, why do we do this? Why do we have those thoughts that we keep thinking, this way of telling our stories or talking about our situation that we keep retorting back to? Well, because it's part of our identity. If it's a thought that you've practiced over and over again, if it's something that you've heard being told to you by your parents or your caregivers or society, or the people around you, and it's deeply ingrained inside of you, it's part of your DNA almost, it's scary to let it go. Because part of you thinks, well, who am I without this? If that's how I've defined myself for so long, who am I if I'm not this? That's why it's so important to spend time thinking about who you want to be, about the story you want to tell, how you want to define yourself, what kind of life do you want to create. We do so much of that in Brave and Bold. We change our lenses, but it's hard to change your lens if you don't know what you want to create. It's like, why would you destroy your house? Like, let's say you live in a moldy house. You know it's not good for you, but you're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to leave that house if you don't have another house to go and live in, right? Because you think, well, it's better than nothing. So you have to build the better house so that you can feel more comfortable stepping out of that moldy house and starting a better life. So I've got some journaling prompts for you that I really encourage you to sit down and dig into, all right? The first one is, what are the stories you keep going back to? How do you talk about yourself, what you've been through, what you're currently going through? Then ask yourself why. What is it that you need in the sharing of those stories? What is it that you're hoping for? Are you hoping to get empathy, to connect with others? How can you fulfill this need differently? So what I mean by that is sometimes people are going to share stories, hard stories that don't make them feel good, just because they want the other person to say, oh, that sounded really hard. And I can't believe you went through this. And it makes them feel seen. And we all need to feel seen. Okay, the need is 100% valid. But if the way you fulfill that need is by telling a story that doesn't serve you again and again, a story that makes you feel small, then you're not fulfilling that need in the best way possible for you. So how can you fulfill that need to feel seen differently, in a way that's going to empower you? Then the third prompt is, what's the story you want to tell about yourself? I would even go as far as saying, what's the success story you want to be able to tell about yourself and about what you've overcome and about where you're going? And if you get stuck there, it's okay. It's normal. Don't worry. There might be something else you need to do first. And that's an exercise that I learned via the book The Calling by Raw Goddess. Okay? She says that if you're still in blame mode or victim mode about what's happened in your past, moving on is going to be very difficult. And in order to move on and start dreaming about something new, you need to figure out what you've learned and how your struggles have made you a better person. Okay, and that's hard, but it's essential work. I've done it myself. And what you do is you make a list of the struggles that you've been through in your life. And next to it, you write down how it's made you who you are today, what you learned from that. And then from that more empowered place, it's going to be easier to start thinking about the story you want to tell. All right? So I've given you a lot of work to do. Go ahead and do this work if you want some help and if you want to be supported in your journey towards starting to tell and to actually live a greater story, then come and join Brave and Bold. That's what we do. We develop a vision that's exciting for you and then see how you can make it happen for real. So if that resonates with you, go to selfgrowthnerds.com/brave and bold and you can apply there. When you apply, it takes just 2 minutes. It's 2 questions. And accepted applicants will receive my private training in which I explain everything about my approach to creating an epic and fulfilling life. You can watch the training and then decide if it's a good fit for you. And if it is, you can join us. And I'm excited to meet you. All right. Have a beautiful week and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye. You just listened to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. Make sure to subscribe and to find me on Instagram at Self-Growth Nerds. If you want individual help developing the confidence to create a more meaningful and exciting life, visit selfgrowthnerds.com today to learn how. Finally, I want to thank my friend Etienne Galano for editing this, and I want to thank you, kind-hearted souls, for growing into your truest, most courageous selves every day and making this world a better, more beautiful place. My name is Marie, and I will talk to you next week.